Imagine the closing moments of the age of dinosaurs. What kind of creature could stand as a final testament to their epic reign? It was a living fortress, a 10-ton titan whose face was an impenetrable shield of bone, crowned with 3 formidable horns. This was Triceratops, a name that is a perfect, literal description from ancient Greek: tree for 3, charis for horn, and ops for face. The 3-horned face was one of the very last and most magnificent dinosaurs to ever walk the earth. In today's video, we will open the most complete scientific profile on this iconic creature. We will journey to the world it inhabited, reconstruct its body, discover how it survived, delve into the greatest scientific debates, and finally, tell the story of its immortal legacy. If these chronicles from deep time fascinate you, do consider subscribing. Now, let's journey back in time and uncover the story of a lost world. Our story unfolds in the final moments of the Mesozoic era. We are in the last 2 million years of the late Cretaceous period, a geological age known as the Maastrichtian. Between 68 and 66 million years ago, the long reign of the dinosaurs was reaching its dramatic conclusion. In this fading world, Triceratops was not an ancient holdover, but a modern marvel of evolution, one of the last and most successful giants to arise. It roamed a continent that no longer exists, called Laramidia, an island landmass formed when a great inland sea split North America in 2. The ground this titan walked is now familiar to us. This land today is the region of the American West, particularly the fossil-rich Badlands of Montana, Wyoming, South Dakota, and North Dakota. Its remains define the celebrated Hell Creek Formation, a layer of rock that serves as a perfect snapshot of the world as it was just before the end. This world was nothing like the stark, arid landscapes where its bones are now unearthed. It was a vast, subtropical floodplain, a mosaic of forests, swamps, and wide, meandering rivers flowing east toward the shrinking western interior seaway. The climate was warm and humid, with gentle seasons and abundant rainfall that fed a landscape painted in 1,000 shades of green. This was a world without grass. Instead, a thick carpet of ferns, cycads, and early flowering plants covered the ground, providing a near-limitless food source. The forests were a mix of ancient and modern, with towering conifers like redwoods standing alongside relatives of today's sycamores, magnolias, and palms. This lush, vibrant environment was a crucible for some of the most famous creatures in Earth's history. Great herds of the duck-billed hadrosaur, Edmontosaurus, browsed through the woodlands. The low-slung, armored tank, Ankylosaurus, foraged in the dense undergrowth. In the rivers and swamps, crocodiles, turtles, and fish thrived, while above, the skies were patrolled by pterosaurs. It was an ecosystem at its peak, teeming with life, competition, and danger. For every tranquil clearing where a Triceratops could feed, a shadow could fall from the forest edge. This was a world on the brink, flourishing in its final act, completely unaware of the cataclysm approaching from beyond the sky. To flourish in a world so rich with life yet fraught with peril required a masterful biological design. So, let's examine the creature that was built to conquer it. To survive in the world of the late Cretaceous, Triceratops evolved into a masterpiece of defensive engineering. This was an animal of immense scale and power, reaching up to 9 meters 30 feet in length, and weighing between 6 and 12 metric tons. It carried the mass of a large bull elephant, but on a lower, stockier, and more powerful chassis, giving it a tremendous sense of stability and force. Its body was a barrel-chested powerhouse, anchored to the ground by 4 thick, pillar-like legs. But all of this was secondary to its most spectacular feature, its head. The skull of Triceratops was its crown, its shield, and its primary weapon. It was one of the largest and heaviest skulls of any land animal in history, accounting for nearly a third of the creature's entire length. In a large adult, the skull alone could stretch to 5 meters, as long as a grand piano. From the front, it was dominated by the 3 horns that give it its name. 2 massive brow horns above the eyes, each a dagger of solid bone that could exceed a meter in length, and a third, shorter horn on its snout. At the front of its mouth was a powerful, toothless beak, sharp and strong like that of a giant tortoise, designed to shear through the toughest vegetation. Inside, it possessed a remarkable dental array, hundreds of teeth arranged in stacked columns called batteries, creating a perpetually sharp, self-replacing surface for grinding fibrous plants. Rising from the back of this formidable skull was the magnificent frill, unlike many of its ceratopsian relatives, whose frills had large openings to reduce weight. The frill of Triceratops was a solid, thick shield of bone. For decades, its function was considered singular, a defensive shield to protect its vulnerable neck from the bone-crushing jaws of a Tyrannosaurus rex. Fossil evidence supports this, as some specimens have been found with healed bite marks and punctures on their frills. But science now sees this incredible structure as a multi-purpose tool. It provided a massive anchor point for powerful jaw muscles, and it may have also served as a billboard for communication. Covered in keratin and flushed with blood, the frill could have been brightly colored, used to signal health, attract mates, or intimidate rivals. The horns, too, were likely used not just against predators, but in head-to-head combat with other Triceratops for dominance, much like modern horned mammals. This biological architecture suggests a life of conflict and consumption. But how did this fortress of flesh and bone actually navigate its daily existence? The life of a Triceratops was a relentless cycle of foraging. To power its colossal frame, it had to process hundreds of kilograms of plant matter every day. As a low browser, its world was the forest floor. Its day would have been spent moving through the dense undergrowth of ferns, cycads, and palms, using the powerful beak we've described to snip tough stems and fronds. Once in its mouth, the incredible dental batteries took over, shearing and grinding the fibrous meal into a digestible pulp. This was not peaceful grazing. It was a full-time job, a constant search for energy in a world that demanded strength and vigilance. But did it face this task alone? The image of a solitary Triceratops is powerful, but the fossil record suggests a more complex social life. While some of its ceratopsian cousins are known from vast bone beds containing hundreds of individuals, clear evidence of large-scale herding, such mass graves for Triceratops are exceptionally rare. Instead, its remains are most often found singly or in small associations of 2 or 3. This has led many scientists to believe Triceratops may have lived more like a modern rhinoceros, either solitarily or in small family units, rather than in the vast herds of their relatives. The discovery of juveniles alongside adults strongly suggests a degree of parental care, a vital strategy for protecting the young in an ecosystem filled with predators. In this ecosystem, Triceratops was a dominant force. As one of the most common large animals in Hell Creek, it was an ecosystem engineer whose feeding habits shaped the very landscape. By clearing paths through the dense vegetation, It would have maintained openings in the forest, altering plant growth, and creating varied habitats for smaller animals, much as elephants do in the African savanna today. But this prominence also placed it squarely in the sights of the apex predator of its time, Tyrannosaurus rex. The dynamic between these two icons was the ultimate evolutionary arms race. For millions of years, these two lineages evolved in response to one another. As the Tyrannosaur developed a more powerful, bone-shattering bite, the Ceratopsian evolved larger, stronger horns and the thicker, more protective frill. The healed wounds and gouges found on Triceratops fossils are dramatic proof of this conflict. They are testament to individuals who faced the tyrant lizard, used their incredible defensive arsenal, and survived the encounter. A healthy, adult Triceratops was not an easy meal. It was a dangerous, formidable opponent, capable of inflicting mortal wounds upon its attacker. Yet, for all that we can reconstruct about its life, the stones from which we draw this knowledge also hold deep contradictions and mysteries, sparking debates that continue to this day. The study of paleontology is a living science, where new discoveries can challenge a century of accepted knowledge. For Triceratops, this has led to profound debates that question the very nature of the animal. Chief among these is a startling case of potential mistaken identity, the mystery of Torosaurus. For over 100 years, Torosaurus was known as a close relative of Triceratops. Found in the same rocks, it was similar in size but possessed a much longer, thinner frill with two large window-like openings. It was considered a distinct, separate genus. Then, a revolutionary hypothesis emerged. What if Torosaurus was not a cousin, but was, in fact, the final, geriatric growth stage of Triceratops? The evidence for this is tantalizing. Scientists have noted that while we have many juvenile and subadult Triceratops fossils, we have found no confirmed young Torosaurus. Conversely, all known Torosaurus specimens are large, mature adults. Studies of Triceratops bone histology show that even the largest individuals were often still growing. The theory suggests that as a Triceratops reached extreme old age, its solid frill would begin to thin and reabsorb bone, creating the holes that define a Torosaurus, a final, dramatic change in its appearance. However, the case is far from closed. Opponents of this idea argue that if this transformation occurred, we should find transitional specimens with thinning frills or small, emerging holes, yet such fossils remain elusive. Furthermore, some studies have identified subtle but consistent differences between the two, such as the number and arrangement of bony bumps along the frill's edge, which they argue supports their status as separate species. For now, the debate rages on, a fascinating window into how we define a species across millions of years. A more fundamental debate surrounds the very physiology of this giant. For decades, dinosaurs were imagined as slow, cold-blooded reptiles, needing to bask in the sun to gain energy. But a mountain of evidence now suggests a much more dynamic biology. The rapid growth rates recorded in the microscopic structure of their bones are more akin to those of birds and mammals than modern reptiles. To sustain an active life, power a 10-ton body, and fend off a predator like T. Rex, Triceratops would have needed a powerful metabolism. The modern consensus leans towards them being mesotherms, possessing an intermediate physiology that allowed them to generate their own body heat and maintain a high level of activity, creatures far more energetic and complex than ever first imagined. These ongoing debates reveal that the animal story is still unfolding. But what about the first chapter of its human story? How did Triceratops make the journey from buried bone to global phenomenon? The journey of Triceratops, from the Cretaceous soil to the human imagination, began during the Great Fossil Rush in the American West in the late 19th century. The first chapter of its story started with a mistake. In 1887, a fossilized pair of horns was sent to the esteemed paleontologist Othniel Charles Marsh. Having never encountered anything like them before, he identified them as belonging to a giant, prehistoric bison. But just 2 years later, a much more complete skull was unearthed, revealing the creature's true, spectacular identity. Marsh quickly corrected the record and gave it the immortal name Triceratops. The discovery was a sensation. Along with Tyrannosaurus and Stegosaurus, Triceratops became one of the first prehistoric superstars, capturing the public's imagination. Early illustrations and museum mounts, however, depicted it as a clumsy, slow-moving beast with sprawling legs and a tail that dragged on the ground, a reflection of the era's view of all dinosaurs as primitive, unsuccessful reptiles. For much of the 20th century, this image persisted. It was the scientific revolution of the dinosaur renaissance in the 1,970 seconds and 80 seconds that gave Triceratops its modern form. A new generation of scientists presented compelling evidence that dinosaurs were active, dynamic, and highly successful animals. In this new light, Triceratops was reborn. Its posture was raised to that of an agile and powerful creature. Its tail was lifted from the ground, and its behavior was reinterpreted as complex and sophisticated. It was no longer a passive victim, but the ultimate survivor, a worthy adversary to the most fearsome predator of its age. This revitalized image cemented its place as a cultural icon. Triceratops is instantly recognizable to millions around the globe, beloved for its unique combination of gentle herbivorous nature and formidable defensive power. It has become a star in films, books, and television, most famously in its moving depiction in Jurassic Park, which portrayed it not as a monster, but as a majestic, living animal. Despite its fame, it's often misplaced in time. Triceratops is a star of the very end of the late Cretaceous, and would never have met Jurassic dinosaurs like Stegosaurus or Allosaurus, which had been extinct for nearly 80 million years before it appeared. From a misidentified mammal to a global superstar, the legacy of Triceratops is a story about both a magnificent animal and our own endless quest for knowledge about the world that came before us. Thus, from scattered bones buried for 66 million years, science has painted an incredibly detailed picture of Triceratops. We have journeyed to its world on the brink of extinction, dissected the biological engineering of its fortress-like body, and reconstructed its daily life as both a landscape shaper and a formidable survivor. We have explored how this single creature was not only a keystone of its environment, but also the subject of profound scientific debates that continue to challenge our understanding of life's history. It was a creature that was not only massive, but also complex and full of mysteries. The story of Triceratops is a testament to how our understanding of the prehistoric world is always changing and evolving. Its image has transformed from a sluggish reptile to a dynamic powerhouse, mirroring our own scientific progress. It reminds us that every fossil is a story waiting to be told, and that our reading of that story is never truly finished. There are still so many files waiting to be opened, so many secrets held within the stone. Of all the debates about Triceratops, which theory do you find most interesting? Is Torosaurus simply an old Triceratops? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. To ensure you don't miss any chronicles of the ancient rulers, Make sure you've subscribed and turned on the notification bell. We've followed the journey of Triceratops. Now, the power is in your hands. Comment below with the name of an ancient ruler you want us to resurrect in our next documentary. The species with the most requests will be our next star. Thank you for joining us on this exploration of a lost world.